Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Lewis. That was great. That was very interesting. I just before we start the question and answer, I just want to make one little comment. So there was he may have had to drop off, but I'm going to contact you with there was a young professor who was here at the University of Alabama for a few years, and he's since moved on to Rice, and he's working in vulnerable transportation things. And so I sent him an email, and he joined for the time he could. But I want to make that connection. He's a great guy to work with. We've done some transit vulnerable community work here in Alabama, so he's a great guy to meet. Uh,
Okay.
so that said, I'll open the floor to general questions. Before we do that, I had one sort of kind of conceptual question. We don't have regions in Alabama, but we have rural areas up against small and medium-sized cities. Would you, and this doesn't need. I don't want to take up a whole lot of time with it. Do you think it's good for rural areas to be adjacent to mega regions or bad for them? Or is that just too complex of a question? Do they benefit or do they get swallowed up and from them?
So now you've asked my opinion, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just
So I think that if you can find a way for the folks who are adjacent to get linked in, it's absolutely an advantage because there's so much opportunity in the mega region, educationally, recreationally. I had a video. The truth is, when we started off with this, I was hopeful that we might be able to think about some automated services, without without the operator because it'd be less expensive, and then learned that once we did our automated on campus, I learned that can't happen because there are not enough infrastructure in the rural areas to support the automation right now. So you can't really do it. But there's this video of this woman, a senior in Japan. She's in a rural area, obviously, but she gets this automated vehicle and you watch, they're really pumping up the automation. And they show that she gets this automated vehicle in this rural area, and her trip, she goes to visit her brother. I mean, how nice is that, right? So we can't undervalue, in my opinion, the importance of people having recreational opportunities as well as the things we need, like the jobs and the healthcare and the education. So I think that even in your cases where the rurals are close to a small urban, it's better than not being close to a small urban because they're going to have, again, things that are not available to the folks. The doctor, maybe they probably don't even have a doctor in the rural, right? So you can get to the doctor. You can get to, and again, if we think about when these young folks graduate from high school, that they can at least go try to get a skill set or college education. If they can't go to full college, full university, at least go in and get some kind of skill. That can help them to do, a little more, get a little more income and, sort of raise the boats. So I think it's better. Yeah. If you're close, but again, you have to have the connection. If you're close and can't get there, it's like not being close.
right. And if you can't get there conveniently, then you're going to pull people away from the rural areas and cause that drain. So that was great. That was great.
Exactly.
Let's see. Miranda has her hand raised.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick question, because I know it seems like the population is always a consideration when the departments of transportation try to determine if they're going to provide these types of transit services. So from your experiences, well, I wasn't able to see with the index that you guys did, was population a portion of that? Was there some consideration for the number of people who had the capability of being served in that? And then I have a follow-up question to that.
So yeah, the answer to that question was no, because we knew they're never going to be enough people.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so that's why we were thinking at the end of the story about how can you do it other ways, it's just why we're thinking about, can the county do something like a Uber or Lyft, providing both the job and the ridership, or, maybe they subsidize a little bit, because you don't have enough population to do that. The other thing I think to think about is, like we talked about ride sharing, if people are going to the same location or proximate to the same location, can we get folks to ride share, set up something like a ride share? And then I think lastly, in that regard, and I would always say this, as you can, you do something to create your own density. So maybe you have a park and ride, I call it a park and ride location out in a rural area that people, they can get their car and they can have a spot where they can park together and hook up with each other. So it's sort of like a rural parking spot, where people can park their cars. Of course, you need to put a camera there because somebody will come out and decide, okay, let me take a car that looks nice. But, so, all of that, of course, has to go together. But I think you can kind of try to create your own. And maybe you could do it, at something like a grocery store or, or Walmart, where they might have some extra parking and you can just, carve off an area for shared rides or something like that. So I think we have to, like you say, do a little thinking out of the box because there are not enough people to coalesce and make, a full bus or a full car sometimes even.
Yeah, because I was curious if there was like a critical mass that the DOTs try to look for, but it sounds like from what you said, in these areas, it would be even difficult to get that critical mass
Right.
unless the community itself does something to pull people together. And even because I live out here in a more rural area, I'm kind of on the outskirts, but there's no public transportation where I'm at. And even getting an Uber to come out here is difficult. So even if there's some incentive for the Uber and Lyft drivers to take those requests because they're very strategic in who they pick up. And so, when they know that they have to drive 20 miles out in order to bring them 20 miles back in, they sometimes won't pick up that ride. So providing some level of incentive may be something to consider as well if it's going to be more of a ride share type opportunity.
Exactly. Yeah. Plus, it's going to cost a lot for the Uber to come out there. I mean, it's going to be
Yes.
very costly. So, that's what we're thinking is that's why I called it the county creating an Uber-like service so that the county actually pays for it. And again, in a way that a local could be a driver and you kind of get both sides of the coin. Yeah, but Uber and Lyft, that's not a sustainable way to do it. Uber and Lyft themselves, the TMCs themselves.
Yeah. Thank you.
That was I'm sorry, Miranda.
I'm done. I'm good.
Okay. That was actually great, Dr. Lewis. So the next hand up is Abai Lidby from the University of Alabama, and he actually has a project funded under this UTC that's looking at community-based rideshare and things. So I'll let Abai ask his question.
Hello, Carol. Nice
Hi.
presentation. So before, I might have missed it, but I would just like to know in these counties that you mentioned, what's the kind of public transit availability in this region? Is there any, or is there nothing, or it's there but not enough?
So it's going to vary. Most of them don't have enough. So it's going to be, so like in the Beaumont, Port Arthur area, and Dr. Goodwin can come in and help me with this because I think she actually did this portion. It's basically on demand for seniors. It's not for everybody. I'm going to ask her to come in and click with that. So it's going to vary. Here, from Houston to San Antonio, there's really not any. There's a company that says they're there, but you can't figure out exactly what they do. But I think the Beaumont is a good example, I think, of something that's there but underrepresented. But Dr. Goodwin, like I said, she did specific work in that area, so I'm gonna baton hand.
Okay, thank you very much. So in the great state of Texas, we have about 36 of these rural transit facilities agencies that operate. And so Dr. Lewis is absolutely correct. Here in our region, in the Harris County region, in our where we plan for 8 counties in our Houston Galveston area council. Even there are holes in transportation, and we're relatively close. So ridership for example, Colorado Transit Authority was providing transit out beyond west of Houston in the Katy area and some other rural areas. And their plan was to extend to Prairie View A&M, which is probably 60 miles from Houston, but the city of Prairie View, Texas is there. And so they've not been able to maintain a high enough level of funding to offer the services. So as always, there's always a greater need than you have money to actually provide. When we go along headed west from Houston to San Antonio, and then if you drop south, that's where you really going into the very bottom part of the state is where rural transit is the absolute worst, if you will, where there are very few, maybe at that in the Hidalgo County and Kennedy County, there are a couple of spots there, and I want to say in Cameron County. So the very tip of Texas, there's some, but in between San Antonio and Brownsville is a huge gulf. And so the need is, like I said before, very great. And I'm going to go back to one other point that Dr. Lewis was talking about. She talked about the medical trips. From part of our research, what I also noticed was that I looked at disabilities and things that would prevent you from doing daily life. Those are the areas that have the highest diabetes, the higher limitations, the highest number of disabilities. So it seems almost backwards that they would live in these rural areas that are very isolated when they have a huge need. And so that was just another point I wanted to bring up.
So just a follow-up on that, like Dr. Jones said, I have one project going on with this UTC center. It's called as CARES, and CARES stands for Community Assisted Rideshare Service. And what you said very rightly, I mean, Uber is so expensive. I heard some stories wherein for a emergency medical appointment, someone has to drive from a rural community to a nearby town, and she had to spend like about $200 on that one single, both ways, like, 100 and 100, just for one, visit at medical center. Second thing is, it's also challenging to get Ubers and Lyft in the rural areas because I believe they have some strict standards on the kind of vehicles you have. I think it should not be more than 10 years old. And with that kind of, regulations, then probably, I mean, it's difficult to, if anyone wants to be a Uber driver, that's also kind of a barrier for them to start a service, some services like that. So, so the CARES project, what it's all about is, I mean, we all know the challenges in the rural communities. First thing is aging population. A lot of them are retired. There's a lot of young adults who are unemployed. So we talk about unemployment, aging population, and there's a very high, high need or high demand for these kind of, some transportation services. So the CARES essentially is a rideshare service of the community, for the community, and by the community. So what does that mean is, let's say if the community can come together, obviously the community will have some vehicles, for example, the church buses, or there might be some other government offices, like, or something else where the vehicles are just sitting out there in the parking lot the whole day, or sometimes even through the week. So we have these spare vehicles which are unused, and then you have this set of population who can drive and who have time to drive. So essentially, to give them a proper training, they become your community drivers. You make use of your community vehicles, and then they start offering rides to the local community members. That's still a kind of a concept, like a high level concept. And there's a lot of other things like, the insurance and
Yes.
the vehicle availability. And with this CARES project, I have run a survey. On the insurance part, I did not receive many responses. I think it's just 4 or 5 of them, but a couple of them said there are some insurance products which are available, which can be used for this kind of purpose. Although it's an idea and thought as of now, but I think going forward, it's possible to do something like this. The only challenge in this case is the administration, essentially who manages this service, because
Mhm.
and how do they manage? So that's another challenge there. But I would also like to share my another project again with the same center. It's called as Drive Smart, and it's all about like in Texas, what you mentioned, you have 36 different transit services. We have a couple of them here in the West Alabama region as well. And as you rightly said, each of these services are funded through different formula grants. There are 5311, 5307,
Mhm.
5309. Some of them can give rights only to the older population. Some of them is only for the
Right.
middle purpose. Now, and most of their operations are kind of siloed. Essentially, they just offer their services independently. So, as a result of this, there's a lot of inefficiencies and duplication of services. I mean, if you look at the region wide, as part of this project, we are actually bringing all these different agencies together, making them talk to each other and see what are the opportunities to collaborate and kind of, develop a region-wide coordinated transportation system. So, and the good part is they don't have to stop what they are doing. It's more about just start talking with each other, start sharing your resources, be it vehicles, be it riders, and how can we make that the whole system efficient and improve the transportation service within the community.
Yeah, I like what you're saying. I particularly think that you're in the right arena with the first idea of, the vehicles that are sitting unused during the course of the day. Makes a lot of sense. The other thing is that Dr. Goodwin and I have done what you said a couple of times in terms of looking at where there's these duplicative services and seeing if you can do that better. I'm gonna start smiling because what we found, and this is actually her study and she led it, but we tried it twice. So Gwen, the first time we did, remember we went up to Tyler and they were TxDOT was trying to streamline services between all the people who were doing the duplicatives. At the end of the day, though, it ends up being a problem because of who funds it and not being able to mix at what seems logical, the funders, and she actually, like I said, she did this whole study. It was under United Way, who was asking exactly the same question.
Mhm. And also another project that I was on with Texas A&M, we asked the same questions. The one that we did in Tyler talked about sharing drivers. Well, one county has different regulations than another county, and if you use school bus drivers, then there was a problem with that because they have hours in which they're idle. So they pick up the kids, drop them off at school, and then they sit for hours, and then they have so could they be utilized? So there were a lot of different scenarios that were offered up, and it was red tape that prohibited much of the solutions. One other thing that you were also talking about was all of the agencies. So in Texas, we have our Health and Human Services Division. So we pulled all the people that provide services and the people that are asking for rides. We tried to pull them together. And again, one of the main problems is that you have a lot of turnover. So some of the smaller agencies that they were using would then suddenly go out of business. And so it's a thing where you have to constantly update your database in order to help people. So very interesting work. I could talk on and on about this. So I'm going to stop and let Dr. Lewis get back to the main heart of the presentation.
No, I think this is a part of the presentation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, and that's great. Anybody else have any questions? We're getting close to the top of the hour. One of the things, and this is kind of a little self-promotion, but be a question, Dr. Lewis and Dr. Goodwin. So I've gotten myself involved in this Podcar City thing, advanced transportation, and I think it was on a slide, Dr. Lewis, that you had. I think that, let's see, it said the title was Livability and Access to Opportunities. You don't have to go back to the slide, but one of the pictures you had was like a tiny little autonomous looking vehicle. I am very interested in the whoosh system that they're talking about out in Sugar Land, Texas. So I may be hitting you up for some contacts in Sugar Land, because I'm actually organizing a conference on that type of suspended, advanced transportation stuff here in December. So super cool that they're even talking about that in Texas, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was going to ask the question if you knew that it was aerial. I was going to ask if you understood that it was in the air. It's not on the ground.
Yeah, it's very cool. So I'm actually, I'm talking with Swift Cities and some of the other companies. I mean, we're hoping to have a conference specifically on that. We're not hoping. I've already pulled the trigger. We're having a conference here on that in December.
Okay.
But I may reach out to see if you know, because I don't know a soul in Sugar Land, Texas. So I'm not too proud to ask for connections where I can. So
okay, all right, we can help with that.
Excellent. Well, listen, I think this was great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Something tells me you might get an email from a buy here from the University of Alabama, because he's working on some things here that maybe y'all have already, some nuts y'all have already cracked, right? So that's great. And look, that's why we do these things. That's what tech transfer is about, sharing our ideas and creating these collaborations. So on behalf of CR2C2, I appreciate your time, Dr. Lewis, and thank you, Dr. Goodwin, for attending, and I hope to see more of y'all.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you so much. We appreciate the request. Thanks.
Great. Thank you.
All right.
right.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Take care.